Hey guys, Mrs. Borja here with your social studies lesson. We're going to be reading about Texas in the Civil War. The lesson before this was about the Mexican War and how the United States and Mexico were fighting over where the borders should be uh, to figure out Texas land, and Texas belonged to the United States at that time. So we're continuing from there and we're moving on to Texas in the Civil War.
Texas and the Civil War. I will know the role Texas played in the Civil War. Vocabulary: plantation, secede, abolitionist, cavalry, tariff, blockade, nullify. The Confederate soldier on the right and the Union soldier on the left fought on opposite sides in the Civil War. Compare the two pictures and explain what they tell you about the people who fought in the Civil War. Texas became the 28th state in the United States in 1845. But 16 years later, Texans would decide to leave. What happened? Like people in other southern states, many white Texans had different beliefs from people living in the northern United States. The most important difference was about slavery. Slavery in Texas. African Americans had come to Texas with the first settlers, but they did not come freely. Planters from the South brought them as slaves. As slaves, African Americans worked for people who bought and sold them like property. A small number of free African Americans had settled in Texas before it became a state, but most African Americans in Texas were slaves. Their labor helped build the state. Most African American slaves worked on plantations. A plantation is a large farm that produces crops to sell. Enslaved men, women, and children labored long hours in the fields. Others worked in the house and at trades such as carpentry or blacksmithing. Whatever type of work they did, they were not paid and they had no say over their lives. By 1860, 3 out of every 10 Texans were enslaved African Americans. There were more than 182,000 African American slaves in the state. The chart shows how the population distribution changed between 1836 and 1860. The population distribution tells about the different groups of people living in an area. In this case, the percentage of enslaved people increased greatly. One reason for this change was the growth of the cotton industry. In the 1850s, the demand for cotton was growing. Much of it was exported to countries in Europe and to textile mills in the north. For Texas landowners, this was good news. As cotton passed through the Texas ports, Texas planters earned more and more money. As a result, they needed more workers to grow and pick cotton. Those workers were African American slaves. Only 1 in 4 Texas families owned slaves, but many people in the state believed slavery was important to the economy. 1. Translate the population distribution into a line graph. Use the...
Okay, sorry, I was trying to get that to pause. So one of your activities is going to be to plot the information from the enslaved Texans onto this graph, and they want to know what percentage of the population was enslaved in Texas. So when you look at this pie chart, you'll see that the free population is in green, the enslaved population is in orange. And so the first one is 1836. Okay, that was the enslaved population was 13%. So when you come down here, 1836 is not 1840, so it would be a little bit before that, and you would want to go up. It's not at 10%, it's a little bit before that. So kind of like right there in the middle, and you would put a dot right there. And then you would do the same for the next two years, 1850 and 1860, plot where they would go on this, and then connect your dots to create a line graph. Okay, So far what we've learned on these 2 pages is that there is slavery in Texas. The African Americans came with what are they called? I'm sorry, I just lost it. They worked on the plantation and they were traded with others throughout their life. There was an increase in slavery. More and more people it was increasing, and it had something to do with the demand of cotton. How more people were wanting cotton, so they needed more slaves working the plantations. So let's move on to the next page. Sorry, guys.
North and South disagree. The issue of slavery had divided the United States from its beginnings. By the mid-1800s, many Anglo-Americans in the South believed in slavery. They said their agriculture depended on slave labor, but a growing number of Northerners opposed slavery. They believed all people should be free. People who wanted to end slavery were known as abolitionists. Some Texans were abolitionists too. Tariffs were another issue. A tariff is a tax paid on goods that come from another country. The North had many factories, and tariffs helped them sell goods. Their goods were less expensive than imported goods that were taxed. Since the South had few factories, tariffs did not help their economy. Instead, tariffs meant that people either had to pay more or buy Northern goods. They felt that was unfair. Northerners and Southerners had different ideas about states' rights too. Many Northerners believed national laws applied to everyone, to every state. Many Southerners, on the other hand, felt states could nullify or cancel laws they disagreed with. For example, what would happen if the United States decided to outlaw slavery? Southern states wanted to be able to nullify such a law. In 1860, the United States elected a new president, Abraham Lincoln, who was against the spread of slavery. Many people in the South strongly disagreed with Lincoln. In fact, many Southerners began talking about leaving the United States. 2. Fact and opinion. Write a sentence to restate Lincoln's opinion in your own words. Texas secedes. In December 1860, just a few months before Lincoln took office as president, South Carolina seceded from the United States. To secede is to officially leave or separate from a group. One by one, other southern states followed South Carolina. In January 1861, Texas called for a convention to decide if they would also secede. A majority of the 174 delegates were slave owners. At the convention, delegates protested the insults, threats, and aggressions of the North. In the end, more than 46,000 Texans voted for secession. Still, almost 15,000 Texans voted against it. Sam Houston was one of the Texans who opposed secession. On March 5, 1861, Texas officially seceded from the United States of America. 11 southern states, including Texas, formed a new government. They called it the Confederate States of America, or the Confederacy. The Confederacy named Jefferson Davis of Mississippi as president. President Lincoln did not accept the states seceding. He said they were still part of the United States. Lincoln promised to do everything he could to keep the country together. This side was called the Union. The map shows how the country was divided. The chart shows the difference in the populations of the Union and Confederate states. 3.
Alright, so this thing is not wanting to listen to me. So, just a reminder, opinion is something that somebody thinks or believes, but it cannot be proven. So they want to know what's President Lincoln's opinion in your own words. And it talks about his opinion and what he believes in that chapter if you need to rewind it. And then the map shows the Union states, which were the ones who did not want slavery, and the Confederate states in gray, which are the ones who wanted slavery. You'll notice those are mostly in the South. And then Union-held territories is in yellow. So these are all territories. They're not states yet. These are all territories. You see Indian Territory, New Mexico Territory, Utah Territory. These are all controlled by the Union states over here and these two over here. But this is the North and the South, the Union and the Confederacy. So just looking at those colors, the question is which has more land, the Union states or the Confederate states. So looking at the different colors, who has more land? All right, so Union and Confederate populations, each picture of a person equals 1 million people. So then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. It looks about 22 and a half. So that would be 22.5 million people live in the population for the Union. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 for the Confederacy. So that looks about 5.5 million people for the Confederacy. And then it even has your enslaved and your free enslaved. So for the Union, they have 500,000 people that are free enslaved. And then for the Confederacy, they have 1, 2, 3.5 million people who are enslaved. So then the question is, what does the graph show you about the distribution of the population in the Confederacy? All right, and so that's where we will stop for today. We read 4 pages, and you'll have 4 questions to answer at the end of this. Good luck, and let me know if you need any help. Bye.